In the previous lecture, we have seen how to compile and execute programs using Windows command prompt. So in this lecture, we are going to study about how to compile and execute programs using the Visual Studio Code. So in one of the previous lectures, we have seen how to install the Visual Studio Code, and we have also seen how to install the C++ extension in Visual Studio Code. Now, using that, we are going to now see how we can compile and execute a C++ program using the Visual Studio Code. Alright, so let's get started. So talking about compiling, we have already discussed about what is compiling in the previous lecture. So if you have not watched that lecture, I'm just repeating it once more here. Having written the program, we need to compile it. So we have to compile any program that we have written before we run it. Now, what is compiling? Compiling is a transformation from source code, that is human readable form, into machine code, which is a computer executable code. So compiling is nothing but transforming or converting our code from the source code, which is the human readable form in which we have written, to the machine code or the computer executable code. So that is what we mean by compiling. So how you compile a program depends on your operating system and the compiler. So here we are using Windows system, as I have already mentioned, and right now we are going to see how to compile and execute our programs via the Visual Studio Code, whose installation we have already discussed in one of the previous lectures. Alright, so let's see how to do it. So coming to Visual Studio Code, first we will see how to create the source file, that means the file in which we will be writing our program. So the first step is create an empty folder in any location. So for running a program in Visual Studio Code, we need our source file to reside in some folder. So we will create an empty folder in any location of your choice. You can create it. Then we will open Visual Studio Code and we will click on File, and then we will go to Open Folder. Now there we will select the folder that we created in the previous step. So we have to go to File and Open Folder, and what we are trying to basically do is we are trying to open the folder that we created in this previous step. Now after that, click on the New File button to create a new file. So there will be a New File button in Visual Studio Code which looks something like this. So we have to click on it, and that will create a new file in that particular folder that we have created. Now give it any name followed by the .cpp extension. So you can name that file, you can give any name you want, but we have to append the .cpp extension to it in order to specify that it is a C++ source file. And then we have to type the code into the editor and save it. So you can save it using Ctrl+S keys on the keyboard, or you can also save it by clicking on the save button which is there in the Visual Studio Code. So these are the steps that are required for creating the source file. Okay, so before we move ahead and see how we compile it, let us first do these steps practically, and then we will come back and see how to compile the program after doing this. So as you see, I am on my desktop here now, and the first thing that I have to do is I have to create an empty folder in any location. So let me use the desktop itself, and I'm going to create an empty folder in the desktop itself. So right click, New Folder. Now let's give it some name. Let's call it VS Sample. Okay, so I have created a folder named VS Sample. Now inside this folder, we are going to work with our source file, but we are not going to go from here, but we are going to do it through Visual Studio Code. So for that, we have to open the Visual Studio Code. So let me go to Start and search for Visual Studio Code. Here it is. Let me open it. And now we will see how to go to that folder. So we have created the folder in the desktop. So I have to go to File, and then I have to click on Open Folder here. So click on Open Folder, and the file that we created was on the desktop. So here I go to the desktop, and this is a folder that we have created, which is VS Sample. So here I click on this VS Sample folder, and I click on Select Folder here, which will select that folder. So here we see the VS Sample folder is selected. Now here I have to create a new file where I will put my source code. So here we see this is the New File button that we saw in our steps. So I click on this new file, and here you have to specify the name of the file. So let me give it some name. Let's call it test again. And then we have to append the .cpp extension to it. So I call it test.cpp. So here we see that this icon changes to C++ because VS Code has understood that this is a C++ file. Okay. So here, once I press enter, this file gets opened in the editor over here. So we have the test.cpp, and here it is showing line number 1. That means it is ready to take the code now. So we have to just type in the code over here. So I have just copied one code which we have already used in one of the previous lectures. So I will just paste the code here, and this is the same code that we have used in the previous lectures as well, which is just for printing "Welcome to the C++ world" on the screen. Okay. So we have to save it. So if you see this white circle over here, it means that this file has not been saved yet. So let me press Ctrl S on my keyboard, and now you see that white circle has disappeared, which means that this file is now saved. Okay, so we have saved the file, and that was what we have discussed in our steps. Alright, so we are done with that. Now we will learn about how to compile it, and then we will come back to VS Code and try to compile this program. Alright, so if you see here, we have followed all the steps and we have completed everything. Now the next thing is for compiling. Now for compiling and executing the program, there are two methods that can be followed in Visual Studio Code. So we will discuss both the methods one by one. So let's go with the first method. So in the first method, from the top menu, click on Terminal and click on Run Build Task. And from the drop-down options, choose C++, g++.exe build active file. So this is the option that you have to choose. So we will see it when we execute it in VS Code. Now the program will get compiled and an output file will be generated, which can be seen in the Explorer section on the left. Now execute the generated output file using the terminal window at the bottom. And how can we execute it? We have to just run the file with the exe extension. So let's see how to do this and then we'll come back. Okay, so we come back to the VS Code, and what was the steps? First go to Terminal and click on this one, Run Build Task. So we have to click on this, and here we see there are a few options that are coming, and this is the option that you have to choose, the second one, which says C++ g++.exe build active file. Because G++ is the compiler that is used for compiling the C++ source code. So click on this, and then here we see it is executing the task. So the terminal window shows us what is being done. So it started building, and then it says here build finished successfully. Now this shows that the program has been compiled successfully. Now if you see in the Explorer section, we see that an output file has been generated with the name test.exe. Now this is the executable output file that has been generated. Okay. So one thing which we can notice is that when we ran the program using Windows command prompt in the previous lecture, we saw that the output file name was always a.exe. But here in this case, when we run it using this method that we saw now, the output file name that is generated is same as the source file name, but the extension is different. So test.exe is the output file that has been generated. Okay, now we want to run this program. So for running it, we are going to make use of the terminal here. This terminal is just like a command window, we can say, and here is where we will be running our programs. Okay, so here it says that press any key to close it. Let me just press any key here and it gets closed. So we want to open a new terminal. So go to Terminal and click on New Terminal, and it will open a new terminal over here. Now see, it is pointing to the same folder that we created, VS sample, which is this one. So that means we are in the right location. Okay, so to run this program, I just have to type the name of the output file, that is test.exe, and then press tab in your keyboard, and then we see that it gets converted to /test.exe. So this is the format that has to be followed in running the output file in case of the terminal of VS Code. So it has to be ./test.exe. So in our slide, we just saw that it was written filename.exe. But remember that we have to write it as ./test.exe. So I press enter, and then here we see the output, welcome to the C++ world. So this is how we can compile and get the output of the program using VS Code using the first method. Okay, now let's go back and see the second method. Okay, so we have seen how to do it in method 1. So remember, this example shows filename.exe, but whenever you run it in the terminal in VS Code, make sure to put / and then filename.exe. So don't forget the / that we have in Visual Studio Code for executing the programs. Okay, so now let's go to the second method. Now coming to the second method, from the top left menu, click on Terminal and New Terminal. So we just want to open a new terminal here, and then a terminal screen will open at the bottom, like how we have just seen when we were using Visual Studio Code. Now check if the path displayed is correct. If not, navigate to the path where the source file is present. So we have to check if the path name that is given is correct or not, and if it is not correct, we have to navigate to the path where the source file is actually present and then compile the program using any of the following commands. You can use the command g++ filename.cpp, or if you want to generate the output file with a custom name of your choice, then we can use this command g++ filename.cpp space -o space and the output file name that you want. And then for executing the generated output file, we can execute it by using this method, that is a.exe, which is the default name of the output file that will be created when you use this method, or the output file name that you specify .exe. And here again, remember, you should not forget the // that you have to include. Okay, so let's go to Visual Studio Code and try this. So here we came back to Visual Studio Code and we are going to use the same program. So here what I'm going to do is go to terminal and open new terminal. So I have a new terminal window opened and I have to check if the path is correct or not. So the path says desktop vs sample. So yes, it is correct. This is the place where I have my source file. Now for running the program, I have to type g++ space and the file name. What is the file name? It is test.cpp. So test.cpp. Enter, and we see that an output file has been generated here with the name a.exe. So whenever you compile the program using this method, the default output file name will be a.exe. And for running this program, what we have to do? We have to type /a.exe. Now let's press enter. So we see the output is printed on the screen. Welcome to the C++ world. So we see that the program has compiled and run successfully. Okay, now if you want to specify a custom output file name, then let's see how to do that. So we see that whenever we use this command, it is going to generate an output file with the default name a.exe. Now I don't want my output file name to be a.exe, but I want to give it a different name. So how do I do that? I have to type the same command g++ test.cpp and then -o, and I'm going to specify the output file name, and I can give any name of my choice. Let me call it my output, and then I press enter, and then we see my output.exe gets generated here. So the program compiled successfully and the output file is generated. Now in order to run it, what we have to type? We have to type /myoutput.exe, and I press enter, and here we see welcome to the C++ world is printed on the screen correctly. So that means it has compiled successfully and it has run successfully. So this is the way you can compile and run the programs using Visual Studio Code using the second method. So essentially we are just making use of this terminal, and it is almost same like running it using the Windows command prompt. So the only thing you have to remember is this / which you have to put before the output file name in order to execute it. Okay, so we have discussed about method 2 and we have seen how to compile the programs and how to execute the output files. And again, I repeat once more, whenever you are running the output file, don't forget to put the / before the output file name. Okay, so that is about compiling and executing programs using the Visual Studio Code. And in most of the lectures that we'll be discussing in this course, we will be making use of this Visual Studio Code and this method for compiling and executing our programs. So I hope this lecture about compiling and executing C++ programs using Visual Studio Code is clear to you. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.